Jackson, Tennessee this morning. Met with John Willis, who is basically gifting me a clarifying tank, a honey pump, and a filter, all by Maxant. It's like a long-term borrowing sort of deal. Very thankful for that. It's really cool. Then I dropped off 4 cases of honey on my way back, and I've been listening to the Two Bees in a podcast the whole way there and the whole way back, and cannot recommend that enough. If you're a bee nerd, and if you're not a bee nerd, listen to it anyway. It may turn you into a bee nerd. It's amazing how many little nuggets you can learn from these episodes. Listening to one, and they're talking about bee viruses, and there has been documented altruistic self-sacrificing behavior, where if a worker has a virus and she knows that she's sick, she will intentionally die outside of the hive, like away from the other bees, in order to not infect her sisters with the virus that's killing her. It's just amazing. Bees are amazing. I'm actually having to wait this morning. Gotta make some syrup and wait for it to warm up a little bit before I can get into some hives. Thing of beauty right there. It's a Maxant 12-gallon clarifying tank. Both extractors are going to drain into that, and then a float switch will turn on the pump, which will pump honey up into this gravity filter. That's the overflow there, and then this will come out to a manifold that I can use to fill buckets or barrels. My raccoon has been back, and he's frustrated because he doesn't have vegetable oil and dead beetles and bees to get into, so he's biting these Coroplast blockers. But he's not messing with them too much, so that's good. What I'm going to start doing this morning is grading these little nukes out. Some of them I think are going to be big enough to make it through winter, and some of them are going to be small enough that I'm going to put them on a double screen board, and that will allow me to winter them on top of another colony. So this one I just got into. I think they'll be fine. They can winter like that. Get them full, maybe give them some fondant. They'll be just fine. This one, cluster size is about 2 medium frames of bees, maybe 2.5. They did not take all the syrup I gave them. That's a week or a week and a half old. They're not going to make it. They're not going to make it through winter without help, so I'll stick them on a double screen board. Easy, girls. It's early morning and it's cool. They're not very happy with me. So getting them on a double screen, letting them reorient to that entrance. I will identify some big colonies in another yard that are heavy, that I don't need to go into for anything. I'll come back and get them, and I think there's 1 or 2 more in here that I'm going to do this too. Come back and get them in the morning and go move them. And then with heat coming up from underneath, they may grow a little bit more this fall, maybe. but it will allow me to equalize into them with frames of emerging brood, maybe 1 or 2. Don't invest too much until I know they're good. And then hopefully next spring they'll start growing quicker because I've got that heat source coming from underneath. So attention to detail sometimes in beekeeping is pretty important. I just moved this hive to over here and set a double screen on the blocks, picked the whole box up and moved them onto the new bottom board. You know, that's how you do it. And I noticed that there were some hive beetles on the bottom board, so I've been over to kill them. And there were 2 bees on this bottom board, only 2 bees. And one of them was the queen. So if I had not noticed that, I would have made them queenless. I would have thrown that in the back of the truck or something and made them queenless right before winter. Goodness. Here's one where I'd say the Swiffer's working quite a lot better. It's actually caught a few. Every little bit helps. Same deal. What are the odds of her being on the bottom board in 2 of these hives? It's cool this morning. I thought they would be in the cluster. It's wild. Come here, girl. There you go. Let's get back in there. There you go. Something else I'm doing, this hive had 4 boxes on it, and that was because I had a dead out in here somewhere, and I divided the boxes up onto a couple of different hives. So that one's got 4, this one's got 4, and there's no brood in the top. There's a little bit of stored food. Haven't checked this one yet. I'll check it for brood. And they don't have the population to take care of that much. And then I've got this 2 over here that's good and strong, and they are light and could use some more storage space and could use some food. So I popped a skateboard underneath this super. I'll come back in a day or 2 and pull that off and give it to them. And then if I have any in excess, like this one may need 1, I could just divvy that up. Almost all of my June nukes are gonna have to go on a double screen board. I've got this one, and this one that I think will make it through winter on their own bottom board. All of these big hives here are March nukes, late March, and they are all very heavy. So they drew out 3 complete boxes and filled them completely. Good hives. It's a European hornet. I hate those things. I don't have anything to slap him with either. He's trying to catch a bee. We've got a pretty good pollen flow going on. But our fall flow here generally doesn't produce a lot of nectar. Maybe they'll get a little bit from it. Probably not. But we do have pollen coming in. That's good. I think I just saw some red pollen going there. That would have been, I don't know what that would have been. I'd say the Swiffers worked fairly well on this hive. At least that one did. This one did not. Interesting. This yard's looking pretty good. I've got this nuke and this little nuke here that we're gonna have to winter on a double screen, but the rest of them are pretty good. This is one of the bigger doubles. I have no concerns about them. They've done really good. Some of the other ones are quite a bit smaller than that. Most of these big hives, well, all these big hives are Corey Stevens VSH Virgins. Some of them are really heavy. Some of them are relatively light. I think the ones that are really heavy, I don't know. I've got a suspicion that they mated with some of my more conservative drones. So there's one on the end down there, the second from that end, that's going to get moved over winter. She is, they sting me every time I get into them, no matter how gentle. And another way that I weed out feisty hives is when I do oxalic acid through the front, that second from the end, you just have a cloud of bees boil out, and they're ill. All the other hives in this yard take oxalic acid just fine. So that's, I use that as a tell. I've actually got 3 hives that will boil out like that with oxalic acid. And I'm gonna make sure that all 3 of those are not available to my mating yard next spring. That's not a trait that I like. This is a good yard. I like how much sun I've got here. It's south facing, south and east facing. They get afternoon shade, but they've got enough sun through the day that I think these nukes are staying warmer and they're growing faster than a set of nukes that were made the same day. So this yard is growing bees really well. I'm pleased with this one. So I'm here at my home yard. I'm pretty happy with this yard. Taking 2 supers off the one down there. Probably drop a feeder into the bottom. Taking a lot of weight off of them. Several of these hives need feed. These nukes are in good shape. Really good shape. Not too many beetles in here. It's a good yard. Good yard of bees. Happy with them. This yard's doing good. I really prefer yards in full sun. I wish this one had a windbreak and the hives are facing north, which I needed them to face north to be against this fence, kind of out of the way. There's cows on the other side of the fence. But they're doing good in here. This was a nuke I started in April. I just added a 3rd box. I pulled that off of a dead out and gave them some drawn comb in it. Popped them open and it smells like dirty feet. So they're working goldenrod or aster right now. They're a little bit light, so we'll keep feeding them up. And it looks like they've got a couple of empty combs here. I need to bring some more combs with me. I brought 2 boxes and I've used them all today. They will not draw foundations this time of year, and they will pick all of the wax off of the foundation over winter. So if you leave that stuff in the hives over winter, they won't draw it out in the spring, or they will cross comb it, wonky comb it, and all that. So all that stuff needs to come out and be replaced with drawn comb. It's starting to be a good time of year to scout out sourwood trees. All the ones turning orangey red over there are sourwood. They will turn a deep red color generally long before anything else will. Sweet gum also turns a deep red, and it turns sort of early, but they're always around water, and the sourwoods are generally on high dry ridges. It's pretty easy to tell the difference in them. You know, my channel name is Duck River Honey. My company name's Duck River Honey Company. I live in Duck River, Tennessee, and our family farm that's been in the family for 4 generations straddles the Duck River. I just found out the city of Columbia, Tennessee is proposing to take out 32 million gallons of water a day from the Duck River. That is 1/4 of the flow per day. So they're going to turn Duck River into Duck Creek is what they're trying to do. And not only that, they're doing it at the county line between their county and my county. So as far downstream as they can do it, so that nobody in their county notices. It all of the negative effects of this will come to the people in the rural county who actually care about the river. The people who are benefiting from it will never see the negative effects. you got to understand, I'm a farmer and I'm not an environmentalist. I am also a hunter and a fisherman, and I would say I am a conservationist, but my education is economics. So I think like an economist, and I look at capital allocation in this country. As a nation, we are sinking an incredible amount of capital into non-productive, unnecessary assets. And that unwise investment has a lot of effects. You know, it's like ripples in a pond. When you throw a rock in, the Duck River becomes Duck Creek to fund urbanization. You know, the cities want to grow, so they cover everything they can with asphalt and houses and lawns so that nothing can live there but people. There's no room for anything but people. We've got to be smarter about capital allocation, about how we live. There's getting to be so many people that we're just going to have to become more sustainable. There needs to be wild areas, there need to be green areas, there needs to be agricultural production to feed people. In the next 50 years, I think, you know, in history, a lot of wars have been fought over water rights. It's been a problem out west for 100 years or more because water's so scarce out there. It's going to become that way here in the east. We get 55 to 60 inches of rain a year and people are already fighting over water. It's just going to get worse. We've got to get smarter in how we use it. These bees were not growing for quite a while as we went through the dearth in July and August. And now that this fall pollen flow has come in, I mean, I can look down from the top bars and see brood. They're packed with brood in there. And again, I've got undrawn frames. I've got to pull these out and replace them, but I'm out of drawn combs today, so I'll have to do that next time. I want them to pack this out with cured syrup before winter. I'm here in this little out yard, planning on expanding this one over the winter so I can, you know, stock it with a full 18 or 24 hives, something like that. Got to talk to the landowner about cutting some trees. It's shaded, and that's Chinese privet and tree of heaven and some junipers and cedars, more tree of heaven. You know, I'd love to just cut this all and pitch it over the fence there. That's his property there too. We'll see if I can get permission to do that, open some sun up, make this a little better yard. That's beside the point. I would just open this hive up, and I would say that Swiffer is actually working pretty well. It's catching a bunch of beetles. There's still a lot of beetles in here, which you would expect for a shady yard like this. Hopefully it'll get better. You can see the grub X on the ground there. Put it down pretty heavy in here. Try to break their life cycle. Do that now and again in the spring. Maybe by next year we can get some control of them. Had to do something with that much of a breeding population to start the spring. Boy, who knows how bad it could be next year. Came back to pull these supers off. I've already put one on this colony over here. And I learned something. These triangle bee escapes, I really do like them. I've been very pleased with them, but I've always been using them in warm weather. And, you know, the past couple nights it's been down in the 50s. And the escape got clogged with dead bees. There were a ton of dead bees on top of this thing. So I'm thinking, when it starts getting cold, do these just not have enough outlets? Are the bees coming down so fast that they just can't all get through? I don't know. And what do they do in Canada? when they're pulling honey? Do they have to use a different type of escape that's got more throughput? Interesting to think about. Learn something new every day. There she is, smoky gray. Same deal here, had a escape under these. No dead bees. No plugged escape, so I wonder if those other two got robbed. And that's why I saw so many dead bees in there. I don't know. You know, one of my grandfathers died when I was 2, and the other one, I didn't see all that much. So I sort of took up with a man I went to church with named Billy Baird. He was our next door neighbor, and next door being relative, it's like 0.6 of a mile to get to his house. I used to ride my bike to his house. When I was a kid, I would just in the summers tell Mom I was going to Billy and Shirley's, and I'd be gone the rest of the day, you know, and everything was fine. He was the most interesting man I believe I've ever known. He passed away this morning. He was 93, I believe, and he was ready to go. I'm not sad for him. I think the world is a worse place without him in it. I feel sorry for the new generation that doesn't get to grow up and listen to stories from that generation. You know, he grew up post-depression and worked hard. I know somebody that poured concrete with him when Billy was in his 70s, and you know, this other guy was in his 30s, and the guy said he almost worked me to death. He wouldn't take breaks. It was a hot day. We were pouring concrete and he wouldn't take breaks. Billy was in World War II. He was in the Air Force, and he signed up. He went and volunteered for the Air Force because somebody gave him a tip that his draft notice was in the mail. So he didn't open the mailbox and went and volunteered for the Air Force. And he stayed in the Air Force after the war. And, you know, the U.S. tested a bunch of nuclear bombs in the Bikini Atoll area of the Pacific. And Billy was there during that. He said that he was on Inuiatok when they tested the first hydrogen bomb, which is a fusion bomb. He said there was some discussion before that on whether they were going to set the Earth's atmosphere on fire in a chain reaction. But they finally decided that it would be okay, so they set it off. He was about 50 miles away from the explosion. They made him get on the backside of tanks and put on welding goggles so they didn't go blind. And part of his job was to fly samples of atmosphere. They had to test the atmosphere, the fallout cloud, to see if they actually got fusion. So they took a bomber and radio controlled it, had a plane following it, radio controlled the bomber, flew it through the fallout cloud, popped open vacuum sealed tanks under the wings to sample the atmosphere, sealed them off, landed that plane and foamed it with anti-radiation foam, took the tanks off of it, put the tanks in another plane, and Billy was on that flight that flew those tanks to Chicago so that the scientists could see if they actually got fusion. Everyone on that plane died early of cancer but him, and he was sterilized from it. Different era. Just a different era back then. He married a lady that had kids and was able to adopt them. He was just a wonderful, wonderful man. Very blunt, very terse, always a hard worker. I really do think the world, this next generation, is going to lose something just hearing about the perseverance and the hardship that the previous generations have gone through. The world's just losing something.